What's happening, my beautiful people? My name is LaBelle. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. If you haven't hit the LaBelle, turn on the notifications, run that up. Usually we'd have a cop and drop episode today, but instead myself and Yvonne decided it seems like a good time to talk about FIFA 21 and then heading into FIFA 22 and what gameplay changes would actually be positive shifts in our minds. And I do want to start out before I welcome you in, Yvonne. I feel that we are a minority consumer, and what I mean by that is Yvonne and I both have competed in FIFA. Yvonne's still competing in FIFA, and we're at that upper tier of playing at a high level. Even many of you watching this video are in that same position. We care about specific details and intricacies that I don't think the majority cares about the same way. Do you agree or do you disagree? And nice to talk to you.
I agree, definitely, yes. Always nice to be on. Yes, I mean, we are, so to speak, FIFA nerds perhaps, and we care about these details. And we have now a new game coming very soon, and we had some news as well. We didn't see really that much about the game, but we can still talk about what we would like to see perhaps in this next game, and also as well what we don't really like about this current game.
I think that makes the most sense, because even if we did have access to the beta, we're not allowed to talk about the beta if it does release and you've played it. I remember this was it 4 years ago, Yvonne, when we kind of worked on the game, sort of?
Vancouver, yes. That was a nice trip.
We'll give you some insider scoop. It was, I think 4 years ago, it was myself, Yvonne Lucasinho, who's also a pro FIFA player from Sweden, and then August, who is pro FIFA player from Denmark. And we got to play the game early, we were grinding the game, and we're giving feedback on the game, but because we were signing paperwork in regards to it, once we left, we couldn't even make videos or really discuss it with anyone. So we weren't able to necessarily have a public-facing opinion about what we had experienced, so we weren't really able to give our insider track or what we want to see change, because then if it became a fact versus an opinion, if that makes sense. So, for example, if we've already played the game, you signed paperwork saying you can't talk about it, now if we say, ooh, I'm really looking forward to this, these are some of the changes that I'm expecting, that turns into being a factual statement versus being an opinion piece or speculation, because we had first-hand experience. That is a complete side note and a tangent. This is almost going to be podcasty, I think, today. But I've got 4 subjects regarding gameplay. If you haven't subbed to Yvonne, if you haven't dropped him some love, I know you're going on vacation soon. Everything's linked down below. Where are you heading for vacation, by the way?
I'm going to head down to Croatia, actually. I have my roots from there, and we go there every summer, so I'm gonna be there 2 weeks actually. It's gonna be nice. Cannot wait for some sun, you know, because when you play FIFA you don't really get that much sun.
I looked back at some pictures throughout the last couple of years, and I definitely was getting no sun. Yvonne doesn't know yet, but I'm actually going to try to third wheel or join this vacation. I'm just going to fly into Croatia and make it happen.
Alright, man. As
we get into this, make sure to comment below. Let us know, what would you shift about the gameplay specifically? Because some of you will agree and disagree with, I'm sure, Yvonne in my opinions, which is perfect, but let your voice be heard. So the first subject I have is the speed of the game. And this is kind of the debate where you're going to have, do you want something more arcadey or do you want something more simulation based? Because that's going to be impacted heavily just by the pace of a FIFA installment.
Yeah, I mean, that one is always gonna be different opinions, because some people, they want FIFA to be more like simulation, like it is in real life. It's gonna go a bit slower, it's gonna be more about passing, possession style, but I don't really think that works too well in a video game, and maybe not as well in an e-sport. I always prefer that the pace is gonna be a bit higher, because that also creates more, I think, skill gap, when you maybe don't have so much time to react to all the inputs. And we had earlier, it was like FIFA 13, 14, 15, 16, very quick games, and from there it kind of got slower every year. FIFA 18 was also a very slow game, 19 was a bit faster, but for the last 2 years I think the pace has slowed down. And what I saw maybe from some material, trailers, etc. Always gonna be very hard to say this early, but the game looks slower and I don't really like it. I prefer a bit more arcade, a bit more pace, because again, I think that creates a bit more skill.
And this is the debate, and a lot of people that watch our videos or live streams, I don't know if they realize, you will have a larger skill gap with a faster game, because as you were saying, the reactions come into play and being able to keep up that pace. But that means we're also going to rewind to the FIFA 13, 14, 15. I call this the golden era of foot, those years. But it is not going to be simulation. And I just want to be very clear cut. Those games, if you play them back right now, they're not realistic. I'm scoring goals from all sorts of ridiculous angles. I am doing skill moves all over the pitch. back, forth, and center. And I do feel that we have seen a transition of FIFA fans that I don't know if they would be on board with that either, because I just look at social media all the time, and so many people are very outspoken about not liking skill moves and how relevant they are because they're maybe not as valued in real life. Then you're going to go towards the other argument where you have a traditionalist, and that's going to be that simulation. It's going to be slow paced, probably lower scoring, and I'd say the skill gap, it's safe to say, would be much smaller, mainly because it's almost taking turns.
Yeah, definitely so. So I mean, it all depends what kind of game that you want to see, of course. Should it try to be like real life football, or should it try to maybe lean more towards having this e-sport where it actually, well, where most times the better player wins?
It sounds like you and I agree. You want the faster paced, more arcadey game. And I think all pro players, competitive players, just advanced players, if you're an elite or maybe even a gold 1 player, you're going to prefer a faster paced game because you're always going to beat players that are not as good as you just because you're seeing the game quicker. Which brings us into category 2, which is extremely important regardless of what level you are of a consumer. Beginner, intermediate, advanced, intangibles, passing, shooting, general movement. What needs to shift in your opinion, Ivan?
I think this FIFA 21 big disappointment has been passing, because it doesn't really feel like passing stats matters that much. Even if they have, let's say, high vision, passing stats, they will still do a lot of errors. And this is something that I really miss, having the possibility to use some players like Iniesta, like Xavi, where you can really tell, okay, this guy has insane passing. This is something that you cannot really tell now. You can have pretty much the same feeling of a player that has, let's say, 80 passing versus 99, and that is something I think that they really failed with this FIFA.
I'd say they almost feel identical in some of those scenarios. So with passing, I think my biggest complaint is actually the through ball system, where it auto adjusts. And you may have heard me talk about this. What that means is, let's say that Ivan and I are playing against each other in FIFA. He uses a through ball, he's aiming it to the left. If the game feels that I've defensively made a read to take that pass away, it will auto adjust that through ball to go to the right, or to find space that should be there. And that's a really big problem on all levels, because you're actually taking the manual side of the game just out of the equation completely. I don't have a big complaint with shooting this year. I don't know where you fall on that, Ivan, but overall I'm okay with shooting.
Shooting is okay. Shooting is okay, but the one thing that I really think is missing, which is a big factor, is is long shooting. Simply long shots, like we had back in the days we could maybe take a shot from 25 yards or plus, and just a normal shot, because now the only way to score long shots is finesse shots only. And I miss this kind of trade, you know. Should you pressure? Should you fall back? If you fall back, maybe you're gonna be vulnerable towards these long shots, but they are no longer a threat, and that's something that I really miss, this kind of attention, and also as well the possibility to actually score as well these bangers.
Yeah, we lost the unpredictable from outside the box in many regards, and it's interesting because we've seen in previous installments a lot more swerve and dipping of those long power shots, and that's been removed in FIFA 21. But overall with shooting, I'd still like to reiterate, I don't have a lot of complaints. Yeah, I find movement to be a real struggle. Because your players, from an AI perspective, offensively mainly, they just don't support naturally. And it's not possible for you to trigger, nor should you have to, 10 players on the virtual pitch. You should always be forming triangles. You should see the build-up. You should have these overlapping runs. I'm sure you recall throughout some of the older FIFAs, even FIFA 17, I remember really well. If you played with a full Brazilian team, for example, these guys were very innovative. They were creators. They were maestros. They made unusual or unorthodox runs, and it gave you a competitive advantage. And then at the same time, you could, of course, be punished via space that was opening up because of these runs into areas offensively, and then it would maybe potentially be a detriment on a transition on the defensive end. But either way, that was worth the risk in many regards, but it gave you a new form of expression.
Attacking AI is very often in this game dumb, really, and I mean, now also you have tools, which is good. You have playlog as well. But like you're saying, you should not really always have to use player log for the player to run in a good spot. And I think even AI in the old games felt a bit better. Let's say running in open space. In this game, they just run straight forward. Just like bullets, like darts, just straight forward. But I feel like in older FIFA, sometimes also they made some kind of, how to say, running and drifting wide more naturally. But in this FIFA, to give you some good runs very often, you have to use player lock, and that should not be the case. And that was also going to be one thing. They had one of the main selling points in FIFA 21 was this attacking AI was going to be better. But I feel like really from FIFA 20 to 21, the difference is minimal. So yes, movement can definitely get better.
And what you're looking for is the curve of the runs. And some of the past
curve,
installments, they would curve their runs so you would stay onside, or they would delay their runs for you to stay onside. And then, if you just think about it, let's say that you play football. I think most of us have played football at some point in our lives. Right now in FIFA, I feel like I have to grab some big. You go there, you go here, you go here. Think if you had to do that on the actual pitch. You had to drag each of your teammates and be like, you need to go here. It's never going to work like that. Everybody has to move as a team, support as a team. And it allows you then to have certain levels of creativity, and it just makes build-up so much smoother. It's just smart. It's just how it works. That's where I'm at. And I agree with you on passing as well. There's too much inconsistency. It's why give stats if they're going to be inconsistent across the board. What do you feel needs to be done? If you're the manager, we have Ivan is the creator of the FIFA skill move sessions for the upcoming year. What changes in terms of execution, or reducing, or even strengthening certain skills?
Well, skill moves, I think overall now is too important. I feel like EA at the moment putting a lot of emphasis around skill moves, and this is gonna be like the biggest skill factor, and I think that is wrong. I think overall that the skill gap should be within pressure play, within movement, passing, but for the, well, at least this FIFA mainly, it's been only about skill moves, only about skill runs, about cancelling moves, and I just want to say that I think that is very wrong, and that shouldn't be the case. So I really hope that the next FIFA they're gonna put less emphasis on these skill moves that are maybe not kind of, they're simply not football. Overall, cancelling moves I think should not be there, and maybe as well putting some more emphasis and some more focus on these natural movements, left stick dribbling, body movements, etc. Because now it's been more about who can create the most crazy move, you know, that has nothing to do with football. So I think they should really go back to basics and focus more about these natural movements. Again, left stick movement, body movement.
No kidding. I was going to ask you, and you answered the question about cancellations. Should they exist? Should they not exist? Should they just be reduced? Because I put out a tweet about this maybe a month ago, and Twitter kind of erupted with the overall consensus being these got to go. Even though people use them, you need them for a skill gap. And offensively, the major skill gap is skill moves. It's not about your passing. It's not about the intrinsic play and different forms of the build-up and the 1-2s or any of those tactical adjustments. It really comes down to the final skills. And then there were months, and I don't know if you feel like this on the competitive end, but I felt for almost 2 months, Ivan, that everybody was playing to get to a position that they could bridge.
Yeah, it was all about bridge all the time. And I face many people now in champs, they do nothing else, just the pass up to Cristiano striker or someone else and just spamming nutmeg after nutmeg bridge. Just the same thing all the time. And I mean, if the game comes to a certain point where this happens, then I think obviously they have failed to create a game that gives you variation and that really includes something more than just spamming the same move. But mainly, again, I think that the issue is that they're putting too much focus around skill moves. Like the skill gap should not be within skilling. I mean, of course, that is also an important part, but the main thing should still be about passing, movement, pressure play, and that's something that I hope that they get back to in the future.
With skill moves, I'm someone who uses way too many skills. I think my big takeaway, or what I want to see always, is the setup. If you're really good at skills, you understand how to set up somebody to fall for skills, how to bait them into a mistake with positioning. And as Ivan was saying, with the bridge, where it became now, I'm in this position, I'm just going to spam it. I remember in FIFA 19, that's how I felt with the La Croqueta. We had all these new players that were amazing at La Croquetas, but they weren't skillers. They didn't have setup. They didn't have finesse. It was almost a slap in the face to someone like myself, or that's how I felt, because I put so many hours and so many years into learning how to do the body feints in different areas. or how to do a body feint into a roulette, or how to incorporate the rainbow flick one time in a game. I'm not spamming it one time when it's all set up perfectly, and being able to register that and apply it because you've spent time working on all these different angles and the setups that kind of go into the play. I just don't want to see skills where it becomes something that people are doing out of habit, not doing out of realization. You cannot reward someone just doing something out of habit or spamming. I think that that's very dangerous, but I also am a fan of skills in general. So I'm not saying you and I disagree here, but I do agree that the cancels could probably go and the bridge dribble needs to be toned way down.
Definitely, but again, I think they're missing these natural pieces, you know, because the most common skill in football is kind of the shoulder drop, you know, and in FIFA you cannot see that. You're just seeing these moves that has nothing to do with football, and it's all about doing as many spins and touches and cancels as possible. This year, this FIFA, it got really out of hands with these cancels, these directional nutmegs. At the end, it was not about playing football, just about abusing moves, nothing else.
Defensive player switching, maybe just defensive pressure play we're throwing into this as well. Ivan, you've kind of hinted at it a couple times.
Yeah, but
what would you see this?
I feel like the switching is not the big issue. The issue is that, as we also spoke about earlier and touched upon, is that how the AI corrects the passes. If you read something, you step forward, and then the attacking AI will still find a way around you and kind of make it, not rewarding to read the gameplay. And that, I think, is a big issue. And one thing as well that I think is definitely missing is the secondary man press button, so that you can actually put pressure with more than one player. That was something that they removed, I think that was in FIFA 16, and it doesn't really make sense because back then they said, okay, we don't really want the AI to do the job for you, but at the same time they introduced in FIFA 1920 these tactics that makes your whole defensive AI go mad, talking about constant pressure, etc. So that's something that doesn't really make sense, and hope that they will bring back the possibility to apply pressure play manually. Alright, not with AI only, but doing it yourself on your gamepad, and that is definitely missing now.
It's so interesting. That should have been our fifth point to talk about, is the quick tactics, or the tactics you can adjust on the fly.
We could add it now.
Yeah, we can add it. All right, so defensive player switching. I agree with Ivan. It's not the player switching that's the big problem. It's the auto correction that is a huge issue, because what happens, and this is bad for everyone, doesn't matter what level of player you are, because what you're going to cause is that people just don't want to step out of position. They don't want to do things manually. So now you have two players that are going to sit back and wait and play passively. That's not good for beginners, intermediate, advanced players. Same thing. It doesn't matter your ability in that circumstance. It's just not going to lead to better quality gameplay. So that has to be corrected. And I like that you brought up the second man press. That, I will say, would be more so applied to higher end players, because you're able to read and micromanage multiple interactions and how they're happening. And then our fifth point, because I thought we were gonna have four, but this is a big one, with the tactics. I hate that it's like flipping a switch. I'm not mad about you having the adjustments that can be made with a pressure on heavy touch or a constant pressure, but you should still have to do it. How many times have you gone up against someone and your opposition plays defensive all game, you score a goal, and then he flips the switch and he's the best pressure player you've ever gone up against? It shouldn't be that big of a difference maker. That has to be bridged where there's some sort of combination or balance between those two functions. It can't be one or the other and it does everything for you. It can't be that assisted.
Nah, definitely not. And they try to patch this as well, to try to nerf it, but it doesn't really matter, because it's just the fact that the AI does everything for you. So even though maybe you're not that talented, let's say that you are, I'm not gonna try to slander anyone, but if you're silver 3 something, you can maybe turn into gold plus when the AI is helping you out. And that difference shouldn't really be that big. It should still be about doing everything yourself mainly. Of course, I mean, there are 11 players on the pitch. You cannot control all of them manually, but it should not be all the AI. That's the thing. Because these tactics, they are just too powerful. And I think if they have that still, if they keep this, they can just as well get back the secondary man press button, because it doesn't really make sense. And also as well, something else, I would love to see some more options in the game. Like now we have as well attacking fullbacks. I would like to see maybe fullbacks stay back. You have team press, that is the opposite, maybe fall back. That would be actually very nice, having more tactics to do in the game so that you don't have to pause all the time. I think that could be a nice addition as well.
Generally speaking, more customization, more options is typically a good thing, because it does allow for different forms of course, expression, or being able to kind of apply your tactical touch. And to build off what you're saying, I actually feel that there's so many players that are gold 3 maybe standard in terms of the quality of what they're able to do on the virtual pitch. But if you have great tactics, and I'm talking meta tactics here, if you have great meta tactics, you can go from gold 3 to gold 1 without getting better at the game at all, not improving your team, nothing, just because of the assistance levels. And if you're running smart tactics in terms of your setup, what players on what instructions, and you've probably experienced this, you've watched my videos or Yvonne's videos or somebody else that's on YouTube, and you've tried out their tactics and you realize, wow, the game's playing so much more open and so much more free flow. Our tactics too strong. It should allow you to get this much better. You want to max out your potential, but the flipping of the switch or just turning on a feature and it changing everything, it just shouldn't be like that. I think it's a little bit too much. Obviously, Yvonne and I agree on that. We just went over it for whatever amount of minutes. I think that's where we're going to wrap up the video as well. This is a little more podcasty, but I thought it would be cool for us to have more of an open discussion about gameplay, and then also for all of you to let us know in the comments what you kind of agree with, what you disagree with, maybe something we left out. And would you like to hear us talk maybe about game modes and those types of shifts as well, or just internally even with Ultimate Team? With all that being said, that's a wrap on another
Thank
episode.
you so much, Mike.
I only wish you safe travels. I know that
Thank you, my friend.
Vacation planned out. Always a pleasure. Probably won't see Yvonne for a couple weeks. I guess will be the heads up.
I'll be back tanned in a couple of weeks, hopefully.
He will be back with tan lines in a couple of weeks. And let us know, like I said, as we build into FIFA 22, what's next on the agenda. And of course, if you've not subscribed or you're not following Yvonne, everything is linked down below. And I'll have another video coming out ASAP.